Back in the early 80s in San Antonio, Texas, my young wife and I were having financial problems and ended up homeless. At one point we stayed at one of the local campgrounds, in one of the little huts. They were small but comfortable with electricity and air. One evening we went out to grab a bite to eat, and afterwards we decided to go for a walk around the area. It was mainly an industrial area divided by large fields of grass. So we were walking and came upon a large grassy field with a white house that looked like it had been moved there, dumped and abandoned. The house looked pretty large from outside. It didn't have a foundation, it was sitting on concrete blocks. There were a set of stairs leading up to the front porch of the house but not connected to the house, just kinda leaning up against the house. So curiosity got the best of us and we managed to get up those stairs and into the house. It was weird. The front room of the house was fully furnished, I mean a large sofa, love seat and other chairs and whatnot stands. Shelves with books on it. Pictures were hanging on the wall, dishes in the cabinets, I mean the house didn't look abandoned. We expected to walk into an empty house, but the house was far from empty. We slowly made our way down the hallway. I was halfway expecting to run into someone staying in the house. The house had 3 bedrooms and they were all fully furnished. One of the rooms was a kid's room, judging by things on the wall I would say a boy's room. The other room you could tell it belonged to a teenage girl. The third room was the parents' room. My wife looked at me and said, "Look like whoever lived in the home just up and left without taking anything more than their clothes." But how the house got on the lot was a mystery. There was a closed door at the end of the hallway, painted an ancient shade of black, chipped and faded with age. I thought the door led to another bedroom or closet. The doorknob, a twisted iron spiral, gleamed strangely in the dim light, almost inviting me to grasp it. As I reached out, a rush of wind seemed to escape beneath the frame, swirling my hair as though the door had exhaled, urging me to come closer. I hesitated, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. What waited behind that threshold? Was it merely a forgotten room, or was it the very embodiment of every dark tale that had ever been told? I opened the door to see stairs leading down into darkness. I didn't have a flashlight so I couldn't see anything below. Then I thought, below. I said to my wife, this house was sitting on blocks, how could there be a basement? Apparently this was no ordinary door, it led to something profound and sinister, a dark dimension. It was starting to get dark outside and the house didn't have electricity. My wife said, "It's getting dark, let's get out of here." As we were leaving I said to my wife, "Let me check something out." I walked around the side of the house to see if there was a door visible from the outside of the house, and there it was, with no doorknob, so it looked like if you opened that door from the inside you would be looking outside. But that's not the case. Later that night, as we sat around a campfire with a couple of friends that we had met since staying at the campground, Fred and his girlfriend Billy, we told them the story about the house with the never-ending basement. They were interested in seeing the house themselves. So we agreed to visit the house again the next day. Since the house was surrounded by warehouses and businesses, we decided to visit the house after 6 p.m., when most of the businesses will be closed. A little after 6 p.m., armed with 2 flashlights from Fred's car, we set out to visit the house. Me, my wife, Fred, and Billy. We arrived at the house a few minutes later. I pointed out that the house was on blocks and couldn't possibly have a basement, and we proceeded inside the house. We entered the house slowly, searching all the rooms and checking all corners with the flashlights. Retracing the steps of the day before, until we reached the door. I looked around at everyone and said, "Well, here's the door." I reached for the doorknob, turned to open it. A lingering scent of damp earth mingled with an unsettling stillness that raised the hairs on my arms. It was almost as if the very walls were breathing, watching me, waiting for the moment I would step inside the door and down the dark stairs. Chilled, yet propelled by a curiosity I could not suppress, I grabbed my wife's hand, she grabbed Billy's hand, Billy reached back to grab Fred's hand, and as a group we all stepped inside the door. I hesitated, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. Suddenly our surroundings had completely changed. I yelled, "Step back, now!" We took a step or two backwards and we were suddenly back into the house. I turned to Fred and said, "Tomorrow we will come back and try again, but we will need some rope." We all agreed and left. When we got back to the campground, we again grouped around a campfire to discuss our trip to the house, joined by Fred and Billy's friend, Lee. We told Lee about the house, he wanted to see the house, so again we all agreed to meet at the campground the next evening and go see the house. The next evening after closing time we gathered at the campground with our flashlights and rope, and proceeded to the house. When we got to the house, Lee looked around and said wow, and asked how could there be a basement in this house. Fred remarked, "Brother, you ain't seen nothing yet." We proceeded into the house and looked around. Everything still looked the same. We slowly walked down the hallway checking the rooms as we go until we reached the basement door. Before opening the door I looked around the area for somewhere to tie the rope. I saw a bed in the last room that looked heavy enough that it couldn't move. I reached down and tied the rope securely to the bed frame leg. We tied the rope around each one of us securely and proceeded to the door. I opened the door and we stepped in. Lee said, "Well, I'll be a son of a bitch." Fred said, "I told ya." Shining the flashlight toward the floor to see where I was stepping, we took about 3 steps forward to where the first step down was. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the stillness, echoing through the endless dark, a sound so raw, so desperate, that it paralyzed me, and the realization chilled me to my core. We were not alone. We stood there in silence, frozen in fear. Just then we heard a soft but stern voice say, "Turn back, leave now, you don't belong here." In a panic, we turned and moved as one back to the door. With a swift breath, I twisted the doorknob and pulled. The door groaned as if awakening from a long slumber. The house was pitch black except for the light from the dim lights from the surrounding buildings and our flashlights. I said, "This is impossible." We were in there only a few moments. It doesn't get dark until about 9 p.m. and when we went in it was around 6:30 p.m. Looking at my watch it said 10 p.m., what seemed like a few minutes was actually 3.5 hours. Had we lost complete track of time? Lee made his way to the bedroom to untie the rope, and we hurried outside the house and untied ourselves. We got back to the campgrounds. We really didn't know what to think about what happened inside the house. I said, "I need a beer." My wife said maybe that's what happened to the people that lived in the house, maybe they got lost in that portal and couldn't get out. We chilled the rest of the night and spoke no more about the house. After a couple of days we were sitting around shooting the shit and brought up the house. We decided that the next day we would visit the house. A little after 6 p.m. the next day we set out for the house. It didn't take us very long to reach the area where the house was located. It was a nice fall breezy evening. It was so nice out that I didn't even realize that we were walking past the area where